Mark Rogers TV's College Football Predictions Week 3. We've had a rough 2 weeks. Bear with us. If you've seen our predictions in the past over the last several years, you know we get off to a bad start. I was like 10 games under 500 a couple weeks into the season last year against the spread and finished at 54% against the spread. The NFL picks better at 60% against the spread. Of course, the confidence picks are more like 68% against the spread all time, although we missed one last week. Mizzou let us down on the road against Arkansas State, giving 10.5. They only won by 7. Great slate of games here starting on Thursday night. We've got an interesting one with Clemson going to Louisville. A lot of people saying, how can the Cardinals start 0-3? Well, this is how they can start 0-3. They can lose to Clemson, as they will. Tigers win it. I like Louisville at home, though. Thursday night game. Put things together to a certain extent. Deshaun Watson gets the job done late. Louisville covers the 6. Louisville plus 6. Clemson wins the game. Florida State, Boston College, as we stay in the ACC for primetime football before Saturday. Friday night at Boston College. Florida State wins. Boston College covers. So consider this, that over the past 2 seasons in Florida State going undefeated in the ACC, no team has given them fits like Boston College. Last season had to pull it out with a late touchdown and a stop inside the red zone. 2 years ago, trailed 17-0 at Boston College. So BC keeps it close. Take the 7.5. Florida State wins, much like they did last week against South Florida by 13 at home. Michigan State Air Force. Trap game. Spartans survive. They do fine. They win comfortably by a couple scores. But Air Force coming off a 21-point win. It's a pretty good football team. The Falcons get 26 in this one. I know it's at Michigan State. I know the Spartans, again, sky high, just beat Oregon. Expect a little lull here. They win it by 15 or 20. Take Air Force plus the 26 against the Spartans. Texas A&M and Nevada. Aggies rolling, lay the 34. Again, if you've watched me for a couple years on here, you know that I hate the large point spreads. Don't know who's going to play in the fourth quarter. Don't know how hard they're going to play. Don't know what the coaching decisions are going to be. Are we going to shut it down? Are we going to keep passing and lay down the throttle? So we don't know that, but I like the Aggies to do just that under Kevin Sumlin, lay the 34. Stay in the SEC with Mizzou and Connecticut. Tigers, as we mentioned, going to Arkansas State, only winning by 1 score. Connecticut's off to a 2-0 start, but they go to Columbia and get waxed. Mizzou wins it, covers the 21 points against the Huskies. First confidence pick of the week. Northwestern 2-0. Big victory against Stanford. Now everyone's down on the Cardinal. Stanford's going to have a good season. They're a very good football team against a brutal schedule, so don't completely take that into account. Northwestern beat Stanford by 10. They took care of business last week against an FCS team. Duke at home's also 2-0. I know the game's on the road, but I love Northwestern. Plus the 3.5 points. So Northwestern wins it. Give them 3.5 points against Duke in this one. Blue Devils lost all sorts of defensive talent, plus their Jamison Crowder and also Anthony Boone from last year's team. They're not as good. That's a confidence pick. Oregon bludgeons Georgia State, but not quite by 43.5. Anytime the point spread's that high, you know, let's say they win at 65-35. Yeah. Oregon wins, take the 43.5 again. I hate those point spreads. Wisconsin does cover. They blew out Miami last week. This week they do it to Troy. Wisconsin minus 34.5 against Troy. Ohio State, Northern Illinois. Buckeyes didn't quite cover last week. 38-point favorite against 41-point favorite against Hawaii. Won by 38. Buckeyes do crush Northern Illinois at home. They've been hearing about how lackluster the performance was last week. Buckeyes cover 34.5. OK State against Texas San Antonio, which played really tough against Arizona 2 weeks ago, only scored a field goal against Kansas State. Okay, Oklahoma State will score at will. They cover 24.5 points here against Texas San Antonio. Really big game, good game at Notre Dame. Georgia Tech comes to town. They're a 2.5-point underdog. Okay, I almost never do this and hedge it. Winner, 2.5-point spread, so I at least like the field goal because how many games are determined by 1 or 2 points? Not many, but here I'm looking for it. Irish win at home in a close shave against Georgia Tech. Take the Yellow Jackets plus the 2.5. LSU and Auburn. Tigers on the road against the Bengal Tigers. And everybody's down on Auburn. Of course, they looked horrible against Jacksonville State. Overtime win. Should have lost, and they should have lost. Auburn's a very talented football team. Jeremy Johnson will get it together. I don't know if it's going to be this week against this LSU team. So LSU wins it at home, but Auburn covers 7 points. Take that touchdown against LSU, a team that's not going to score a ton of points. Won last week at Mississippi State by 2. Okay, here we have a confidence pick. We've got Georgia, South Carolina. I know South Carolina has quarterback issues. I know that they're really not that good. I know that they just lost to Kentucky. I know all this, but it's 17 points. Games at Georgia, Bulldogs the much better team, but they play pretty conservatively. This game always challenges us to correctly pick a winner. This one always surprises, almost always surprises. So Georgia does win, but South Carolina take the 17 points in a confidence pick. All right, USC-Stanford, huge one in the Pac-12. USC finally plays somebody, and they play a pretty good team. It's at the Coliseum. Trojans win. I will take Stanford plus 10 points. They're not what they were against Northwestern 2 weeks ago. The Stanford team is going to keep it tight. Take the 10. All right, we got TCU taking on SMU. I got to take the 38 points in the Mustangs. SMU's schedule, you got to credit some of these teams that it seems like their non-conference slates are the type schedules that we should see out of the Power 5 teams to correctly compare them. And SMU's another one that plays just about everyone tough out of the Big 12. Texas San Antonio doing it as well, taking on Arizona out of the Pac-12. And then they take on Kansas State and Oklahoma State. That's tough stuff. TCU wins SMU plus the 38. Okay, Bama-Ole Miss. Rebels have looked amazing on offense, scoring over 70 points against 2 inferior teams, most notably Fresno State last week. Alabama really looked impressive in the second half against Wisconsin, put it on cruise control last week against Middle Tennessee. Bama at home covers 6.5 against Ole Miss. I like this in the 30 to 20 range, something like that. UCLA-BYU, Tanner Mangum. If the kid is stepping out onto the field and there's just seconds to play and BYU's down by less than a touchdown, beware. Be fearful, Bruin fans. Other than that, I think you're in good shape. UCLA, the much better team. 16.5's a bit strong for me, though. Take BYU plus the 16.5. Take UCLA to win it outright. Utah, no Travis Wilson at quarterback against Fresno State, but Fresno's really just that bad. I know Utah doesn't travel well always, but I'll take the Utes, cover the 14 points against Fresno State. I usually just do the top 25 games, but I see like 3 other games that are very intriguing, very important, could be potentially, depending on what these teams do down the road. Miami-Nebraska. Huskers have already blown a game against the aforementioned Tanner Mangum. Miami at home this year against Nebraska. Lost in Lincoln by 10 last year. Brad Kaya, much more experienced quarterback. Nebraska lost just about all its playmakers from that team. So I like Miami to cover this one against Nebraska. Canes -3. Arkansas, Texas Tech. I know the Hogs looked horrible last week. That game was at home against a MAC team in Toledo. Texas Tech has nothing on defense. They've got a playmaking sack specialist at defensive end. They were supposed to be better this season. They're still giving up tons of points against inferior teams. I love the Hogs to roll in this one, to be mad and angry about what happened against the Rockets last week. Arkansas at home -11 over Texas Tech. And finally, we got Kentucky at Florida. I like the Cats at home against the Gators. Who knows what the Jim McElwain incident against Kelvin Taylor will either galvanize this team, or maybe they just kind of sleepwalk through another game. East Carolina is not as good as Kentucky, not this season without Shane Carton and company. I like Kentucky at home to pull off a slight upset. Take the Cats, so you take the 3.5 as well at home against Florida. Those are our picks. I'd love to hear your selections for Week 3 in college football right here on Mark Rogers TV.